Hello, everyone. Welcome to 10 Minutes Astrology. Hi, Alejo.
Hi, hello everyone.
Hello. Hey, Alejo, your place looks very nice, very bright at this moment.
I'm
So,
still
all set
recording
about.
on the kitchen because I don't have
Yeah.
a furniture yet, but yes.
Okay. Kitchen is the one place I love most in any house. I think maybe that's a influence from a Japanese writer, Yoshimoto Banana. I love most, and her one of her book called Kitchen.
Huh.
And she was talking about no matter what happened, anytime kitchen is the best part of the house. I love and every time I need some emotional support or something, I will go to the kitchen.
Yes,
Yeah,
good.
I really I think maybe that's my cancer rising.
I was thinking exactly the same. I didn't want to say it, but I was like,
Oh,
this
don't
is a
want to say it.
Cancer
It's
rising
okay.
saying, yes.
It's okay. I think it's cancer rising, and it is part of astrology. It's a part of how we identify. How we identify with ourselves, and so that is a very interesting. Well, first thing first, commercial time advertising. So, first, I think I want to say, happy winter solstice for North Hemisphere or happy Capricorn in Greece. I think because the time we podcast this episode is on 21st of December. So, it's a very
Yes.
important day for astrologer because the four cardinal point, when some move into the cardinal point like Capricorn, Cancer, Aries, Libra, is usually considered like people think about a huge energy or important day. So,
Yes.
the second thing is that our coming event, the at this moment, I think it's very busy. There's lots of event, but most important event for me and Alejo is the next month. It's the next month. Yes, the next month, and
Yes.
yes, Alejo.
Next year.
Oh yeah, even next year on the 14th of January, Alejo will have a webinar with work with David Costello,
Yes.
and both going to talk about Pluto moving into Aquarius. That's such a important thing. We astrologer need to focus on because next year there's two planets. I mean, in the March next year in March, there's two planets move the sign, change the sign, and both outer planet and heavy planet. One is Saturn, move into Pisces, and on 23rd of March, Pluto moved into Aquarius and will stay there for 20 years until 2043. And image, is that have a big impact? I think that would be a
Yes, of
huge
course it
impact.
will. Yes.
Yeah, so don't forget if you are interested on this subject, Pluto in Aquarius, come to join us on the 14th of January, Alejo and David Costello. And then the next one will be the 25th of February, and that one would be Liam McCarthy, our friend, and Christine Skinner talking about similar things, Pluto in Aquarius, from different view, from different angle. That would be so interesting. Well, I was talking about this is a very important episode for us too, because it's not only focused on the winter solstice, but it's a little ending. I don't want to say ending, a little things
Yeah,
going
it's like
to
it is like
yeah
an end.
a part of a thing because we've been since we started our 10 minutes astrology podcast. Now it's nearly 50 episodes. 50. Could you imagine
Wow.
that? We
Yes.
do quite well, to be honest. But we talk from the sun, moon, ascendant to beginning with, and talk about 12 signs, talk about all the planet and apart from outer planet, and then we talk about the house. Today we're going to finish this part of circle is the house. We're going to close with 12 house.
Good.
Good, yes. So 12 house sounds like an ending if you do the round the circle, right? Because you beginning with first house and you come to
It
the
is kind of an ending, but you should know it's called the 12th house. I don't know if people know this. So like everything rises on the east, also the houses rise on the east.
Yeah.
So it's called the 12th house because it's going to be the house number 12 to rise, which means that it has to go all around the zodiac, all over the
Ah.
horizon. Then it has to set, and then it will go all under the earth, and then it will
Uh-huh.
rise. The first house is the first house because it's the first one that's rising, and the 12th
Uh-huh.
house, 12th house because it's the last one to rise. So
Oh.
it has a meaning of being the last, I think,
Yeah.
and in a way, this kind of resonates with the idea of endings. But it's like you're saying, it's not really an end in itself. It's just it has a feeling of an ending. That's what I
Uh-huh.
would say.
Feeling of finding. It is very interesting because as a beginner, when I was a beginner, um trying to understand the impact of planet in the 12th house is one of a big challenge
It's very
because it's
difficult. Yes.
so intangible, it's so abstract. Most I think most of the time it's just like you don't know how to say it. And then especially when you prepare the chart, you just like why? Why? Especially so one thing is very interesting, especially I think some astrologer, doesn't matter traditional astrologer or the modern astrologer, some astrologer does consider 12th house as a place not nice, not a good
Mm.
house. So, but the problem is you will see so many public figures. They have a whole lot of planet in the 12th house. So that is kind of you know, a challenge for learning. Alejo, could you give us some idea about the 12 house?
Okay, so the 12th house, um, I agree. It's a bit of a, it's a house that's hard to grasp. In a
Mm,
more like mundane, literal approach, like
mm-hmm,
not so symbolic, it's very much related with the idea of institutions
mm-hmm,
and the idea of being in some sort of captivity or something like that. Not
uh-huh,
captivity, but the idea of being away from the ordinary world, being
mm-hmm,
separated from the ordinary
mm-hmm,
world. So this is like the most physical, literal meaning, right? So we could
mm-hmm,
relate planets in this house to prisons,
mm-hmm.
hospitals,
Yeah.
or other institutions or other places that force you to be kind of separated from the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm,
Now, if we take this to a symbolic level,
mm-hmm,
what this house is about is actually being kind of realizing that there is a wider context, that
mm-hmm,
is a greater context, and
mm-hmm,
that you kind of might be called to surrender, to
mm-hmm,
sacrifice yourself or whatever planet you have there for
mm-hmm,
that greater context, for that something
mm-hmm,
that's greater than you. So in institutions, for instance, what matters is not the individuals. What matters is
mm-hmm,
the work of the institution, right? So there is a
mm-hmm,
sense of surrendering to the institution. And when you are in
mm-hmm,
places that are like you're taken away from society, there's also this idea of uh, like losing part of your identity while you're there. Like prisoners, they have to give in all of their things, and they will be dressed up in clothes
mm-hmm,
that are not their own, so they're all dressed up
mm-hmm,
the same way. The same
mm-hmm.
thing happens when you go into hospital. You give away your stuff, and you're given
Yes.
another dress. It's like you lose your identity in order to be there. So it's related
Mm,
with this idea of being separated to the world.
mm-hmm,
And now, what happens there? When you go to these places, hopefully, prisons should work as educational centers, let's say,
mm-hmm,
and people will change there. Also, if you go to
mm-hmm,
hospital, you go there and you change. So there is
mm-hmm,
this idea of some kind of profound connection with something very deep within yourself that
mm-hmm,
may find a new way of expressing itself. So
mm,
that's why I think it's sometimes also related with the idea of the collective unconscious. This
mm,
idea that there is this pool of content that
mm-hmm,
is not accessible, but
mm-hmm,
in order to reach it, in order to get in touch with it, you need to go within yourself. You need to separate yourself from the world, and you
mm-hmm,
need to meet your inner realm, and
mm-hmm,
from there you will be able to connect with it. So this idea of connecting to the unconscious. Planets that are in the 12th house, they are connected not only with your own unconscious, but with the social unconscious. So they might
Mm-hmm.
be expressed in a diverse way, in very different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And the last meaning I would add is in traditional astrology, it's considered our hidden enemies.
Oh, yes.
So this idea that the seventh house is the enemies that we recognize, and the 12th
Mm-hmm.
house is our hidden enemies. And we need
Mm-hmm.
to remember that this was designed for kings when they had to decide whether to go to war or not.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Mm-hmm.
astrologer had to discover like who is supporting you, who is not supporting you, and who is
Mm-hmm.
pretending to support you, but is
Mm-hmm.
actually a hidden
Mm.
enemy. But
Yeah.
again, we can put this into a psychological meaning, and we
Mm-hmm.
could say, okay, who are our hidden enemies? So
Mm-hmm.
perhaps our fears are our hidden enemies.
Mm-hmm.
Unconscious content, we might relate to it as hidden enemies. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes planets that are in the 12th house, we see them as hidden enemies. We don't relate with them fluently. We kind of fear them. We kind of
Mm-hmm.
want to lock them away, like put them in
Mm-hmm.
prison,
Mm-hmm.
instead of letting them flow. But if we do that, if we get to access them, actually, they have all of the wisdom of the collective unconscious, so they might express in a very rich and powerful
Mm-hmm.
way. This is
Mm.
my understanding of the 12th
Yeah.
house.
Yeah, I continue. I really enjoy the bit about you say, that help people understand the 12th house is you separating from yourself and also you separating from society. And talking about hospital institution in the history, in the European history, as I understand in the early time, like maybe even the Renaissance or the medieval, hospital is a place, it's not to cure the disease. That's a doctor's job, that's clinic. They go to cure your disease, they go to healing you. But the hospital
Mm,
is kind of a abandoned place. So I have no cure for you, and that
mm,
you are contagious. So we're going to move you to hospital and
mm,
let you die there. So that is a place you've been unwanted. You've been sent to there to the 12th house. And interestingly, you mentioned about the traditional hidden enemy, and I heard about several traditional astrologer, talking about this and give a more fine definition because most people say, so who is the hidden enemy? Could it be he, or he? They say, no, if you can name it, they are not hidden. If you
mm,
can name it,
mm,
they are not hidden. So it's the people you really don't know, and you probably unable to detect it, such as a witchcraft, such as a that's the things you don't understand, or you blame the god, you blame the demon. And interesting, I think a few astrologer also related, like Dorian Grimbaum or Lindbell, they also related some meaning about the Greek idea of a diamond, the
mm,
diamond in this idea, because they are the spirit in the mythology. They are spirit come with you into this life, somehow trying to hinder you what you are going to do, try to block your way, but make you understand you have a more important thing to do rather than
mhm,
focus on tiny little bit things. So my understanding of the 12th house is somehow is some trouble you can make for yourself, but you have no one to blame. You can blame the god, you can blame the devil, you can blame, but also you can blame yourself. And I like a word they use to for the 12th house called self undoing. So
yes.
yeah, it's like you make some trouble for yourself and you try to destroy yourself, but which is not 100% totally negative meaning. My experience, I have two planets in the 12th house, and my experience is yes, they are difficult to understand, and you probably need a long time to work with them and try to give it away, really literally give it away and recover it. So it's a very
Mm.
interesting place. Should we work on a chart to?
Yeah, let's.
Yeah, that I think this chart you suggested because it's one of the artists you really like, right?
I really like her, and I think it's a great chart.
Okay, that's check this chart. Could you tell us a little bit more about uh peanut Bosch?
So,
Bosch.
yeah, I don't know. I call it Pina Bausch. I don't know, but I say it
Okay.
like in the Argentinian way. I don't know if it's the right way.
Oh, it's a German word. Come on, I can call it
Bosch,
in Chinese Mandarin
Bosch,
too. I
yeah.
know how to read in Chinese Mandarin, so doesn't matter. We know who she is.
Next time we'll choose a Chinese Mandarin artist.
Please don't.
So this is Pina Bausch, yes, and you can see she's Leo rising.
Mm-hmm.
And she has a lot of planets in the 12th house, right? So she has the Sun, Pluto, Mercury, and Chiron.
Mm-hmm.
Pluto and Chiron we haven't talked about yet. So
Yeah.
we're going to focus especially on the Sun and Mercury, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She's a dancer and she was a choreographer. Her company actually is still working, even though she passed away a few years ago. Her
Mm-hmm.
company is still working.
Yeah.
And well, if we try to look at these planets in the 12th house,
Mm-hmm.
we said the sun is about the self, right? And your
Yeah.
identity and where you get vitality from. And if it's in the 12th house, we would say that maybe a place where she gets vitality from is the collective unconscious, right? So maybe she gets really, really inspired by collective archetypes, collective
Mm-hmm.
ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Also with Mercury there, we could say that she understands the collective unconscious. She understands that some parts of the psyche are hidden, and she's interested in talking about that, in learning from that, and also in
Mm.
journeying, in doing like this journey of discovery and learning into the depths of. And you can see it in her plays, like they do play the archetypes in their plays. I
Yes.
think that's why it's so powerful. Yes.
Yeah. I still remember first time I watched her group performing the Rite of Spring with the music
Mm,
of Stravinsky. It's such a violent. In the beginning it's very gentle, a very lovely, very sweet young girls, and then eventually you realize they're going to sacrifice a young girl. You just like, oh my God, that kind of you push me, I push you, and that image with the body language, you can see that is kind of very, very like Sun in Leo, and well, as we
yes.
have no idea about Pluto yet, but the conjunct Pluto, you
It's
can
yeah,
ignore that. We
yeah.
it is a very interesting chart, and I think with the 12, I think you give it in or you give away. Or I like thinking about all the planet in the 12th house. You give the word, you give it to the world, and then you have your fair share. So how
Yes.
some client ask me, how do I reach my 12th planet in the 12th house? I say you have to use it for the for the everyone's good. You use
Yeah,
it, you
this I
give it away, and then you can maybe share a little bit for yourself.
Yeah, it's this idea like something greater than you.
Yeah.
You surrender yourself to something greater than you.
Yes.
And I feel like with the sun in the 12th, I think there is
Mm-hmm.
this great ability to
Mm-hmm.
make other people shine. It's like
Mm.
you give away your light so that
Mm-hmm.
other people will ignite their light. And
Mm.
in the documentary that's called Pina Bau, it's called Pina,
Mm-hmm.
which is it's her company has made it for her.
Mm-hmm.
She almost doesn't appear.
Oh.
It's about her, but you almost don't see her. And I think that's a very thing of Sun in the 12th. So it's like
Thank you.
the way of honoring her is by
Yeah.
showing you how she made all of these dancers shine instead of
Yeah.
showing her and her life and these kinds of things.
Whoa, I love this story. Thank you. I think this is one of the signature of the planet, especially Sun, in the 12th house.
Especially.
You
Yes.
shine, but through whole society, the culture, the creativity you give to this world, not only you shine yourself. I love this idea. Oh, thank you, Alejo. Should we give a little bit of exercise for our
Yes.
audience? Yeah.
I would say to think about Saturn and
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter. Like, well, how would you interpret Saturn in the
Ah.
12th and how would
Mm-hmm.
you interpret Jupiter? They're very different
They are.
planets. So
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter is about hope and faith and what gives you a sense of purpose. So
Mm-hmm.
where does this person find a sense of purpose and faith if it's in the 12th house? And then
Mm-hmm.
Saturn is more about our fears, our sense of restrictions and
Mm-hmm.
limitations. So where do people need that if you have
Mm-hmm.
Saturn in the 12th?
Mm. Thank you. Wow, that's a very interesting to think about the Saturn theme. And maybe you will think about how to give it away and to benefit everyone, and then this person will collect it back a little bit, or how to think about Jupiter, the theme about expansion, about the lucky, about the foreign culture, about the growth, about the belief, and how they get think about it, and also try to explain if you have any a planet in the 12th house, and learn it. If you have any question, please leave the comment in the YouTube comment area, or join our group at the 10 minutes astrology and ask us, because we are there to to help, and please join our group. Well, it's always so nice to chat with Alejo about astrology, and by talking about all these basic things, you and me, we both learn it again. To be honest, we
Definitely,
both
yes.
learn it again. Well, it is so nice to have this episode, and we close the circle of our first house to the 12th house. Is
This
really
journey.
interesting. So it's a beautiful journey. So Alejo, what are we going to work on for next couple episodes?
So next episodes, be ready, because we're going to go beyond the frontiers of the known universe. We're
Oh
going to go to
yeah.
the trans-Saturnian planets. So we're going to be talking about
Okay.
Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto.
Okay. Wow, that would be so interesting, because so far we haven't covered it, and every time when we look at chart, we will say, "Oh, we haven't talked about the Uranus and the
Yes.
Pluto, so we have to ignore it." Now is the chance. Now we're going to have a nearly whole solar system. We are going to understand the whole chart, and then we get a more tour to analyze the chart. Thank everyone for watching and listen this episode of 10 Minutes Astrology. Today we're talking about the 12th house, and if you have any requests, you want to have a chat reading or discussion with Alejo, you can find Alejo on his Instagram, Liminal Cosmos, right?
Yes.
Liminal Cosmos. Or visit. Do you have a website?
I have a website also, liminalcosmos.com. And my
Okay.
email is meetme@liminalcosmos.com.
Oh, meet you at Liminal Cosmos. I'd like to. I think if anyone I want to meet at the Liminal Cosmos would be you. What my best friend, and then we're there to help each other. That would be lovely. So, and next week we're going to talk about Uranus, and don't forget on the 14th of January, Alejo going to have a webinar talking about Pluto in Aquarius, join with Darby Costello. So it will be a very interesting webinar. And then, if not, see you then, and also happy winter solstice. Bye.
Bye bye.